CBS, America's #1 independent television network, presents the following sports exclusive.
It's Elliott! Elliott for the touchdown! Cowboys lead!
Rookie kicker.
Blocked. Simmons blocked it. Running back with it is Parks. Down the sideline. Parks takes it all the way back. Denver takes the lead at 25-23. Unbelievable.
Welcome to Basically a Football Show.
Basically a Football Show, Week 11 in college, Week 10 in the National Football League. And for once, we had a really good weekend of NFL football. But of course, the first week of good NFL football has to be pushed aside for that college football weekend. Every year, you know, no matter what you think, things can be cruising along. You look at the schedule, oh, this is no big deal. There's always that one weekend that screws the whole thing up. And this was that one. I'm Zach, along with me is Greg. And Greg, oh, God, what happened? Everything like it was so simple.
It really did. And all of a sudden, now it's not at all simple. It got very complicated very quickly. We had just a complete, total shakeup from the number 2 spot down in the playoff rankings.
And the thing is, even with the top 3 of the top 4 teams losing for the first time in 30 years in one weekend, you say shakeup, but it's not really a shakeup as much as it is like a muddling, because those top teams, we had said all season that the top tier of teams had kind of separated themselves from the rest of the pack, and they still are. It's just now there's a couple wrenches thrown in because of conference standings and title game implications.
I would say this, though, if I were a fan of, and I don't remember, there was a team it probably happened to a couple weeks back, but, we'll use Ohio State as an example. You move from number 2 and then you lose, you drop down to 6. Why did Michigan get to stay at 3?
That's a good thing to ask, because here's the rankings. Alabama still 10-0, one of 2 undefeated teams left in college football in the bowl subdivision. The other, of course, your Western Michigan Broncos. Yeah. Hold strong at number 21.
And just really, let me throw this in really quick before I forget. The Rockets finally did it. We finally beat Northern Illinois. Okay, we can move along now.
Yes. Guaranteed rate field.
Yes, sir.
That? Great.
Very good game, actually, too. But I know we won't talk about it later, so I had to get it in now. All right, go ahead.
Alabama kills Mississippi State 51-3. No big deal. Alabama, number 1 in the country. You know, number 1 with a bullet. Then you get the rest of everything else. So number 2 last week was Clemson, and they lose on a late field goal by Pittsburgh, 43-42. You know, what's there's a word that people use for a team that's really good that loses a late important season game. Clemsoning.
Right.
Clemson went a whole season without doing it last year. Congratulations, Tigers. But, you know, a year later, and we're back to Clemson doing its Clemson thing. Doesn't hurt them too much. They fall down from 2 to 4. Number 3 was Michigan, and they lose by a point on the road to Iowa, who's not the same Iowa that it was last year. And they don't move. They stay at 3. And Washington loses at home to a ranked USC team, maybe got exposed a little bit. So they drop 2 spots to number 6. Louisville wins 44-12. They move up a spot. Ohio State beats Maryland 62-3, moves up 3. But I don't understand why Michigan gets to stay where it is. Clemson lost by a point to an unranked team. I guess Michigan was on the road. I don't think that really makes much of a difference. But at the same time, I also doesn't think it makes too much of a difference on the whole here.
Okay, here's the thing I'm looking at. Okay, Washington lost to a ranked team and dropped out of the playoff picture. Michigan lost to an unranked team. And I think that anybody that's listening to this show, I'm going to say 99% of them are going to agree USC is probably better than Iowa. Would we both agree? So.
Yeah.
So Washington.
I'm a little biased, but yeah.
What's that?
I'm a little biased, but I think just on the surface, USC.
Yeah, I think that USC is a better team than Iowa.
Yes.
And Washington lost to a USC team that was not only better than Iowa, but ranked at the same time, and they get punished. Michigan loses to a team that wasn't ranked, isn't really that good, to be honest, and they get to stay where they are. If I'm a Washington Huskies fan today, I'm pretty upset.
Yeah, I think the thing that, again, cancels this stuff out is that in 2 weeks, Ohio State and Michigan will play each other.
Right.
And they'll cancel each other out. The thing that's really strange now is because of these losses, if the season ended today, Ohio State and Michigan would not be playing in the Big 12 title game or Big 10 title game.
No.
Penn State would be playing in the Big 10 title game.
No, I mean, really, the only way that doesn't happen is if Penn State loses between now and the end of the year.
Well, if Michigan beats Ohio State, then Michigan goes.
Right, but short of that, yeah. I'm just assuming
Right.
Ohio State's going to beat Michigan. I can't assume otherwise, or I'd get thrown out of Buckeye Nation.
Right. The thing that would make the Big Ten picture easy is if Michigan beats Ohio State, and then they go to the Big Ten title game, play Wisconsin, beat Wisconsin, done deal. But as things stand now, if Ohio State beats Michigan, Penn State gets to go. Penn State is slowly creeped up to number 8 in the country. Insane that this Penn State team is number 8, but I think it's just out of necessity that they have to have them up this high. And they would play who is right now number 7, Wisconsin. Both teams have 2 losses. And I guess the winner of that game could, in theory, jump into that top 4 because they have to.
Right.
Because they deserve it.
Like we said before we started recording today, we are going to get one of two things is going to happen this year. Mm-hmm. We're either going to get our first non-conference champion in the playoff, a team like let's say Ohio State beats Michigan, finishes the season at 11-1, and ends up getting in, or we're going to get our first 2-loss team in the playoff. One of the two things is going to happen, and it's just a matter of which way the committee goes. So my feeling personally is that you've got to go towards the conference championship route, because if not, then you have pretty much done everything you said the playoff wouldn't do, which is render the regular season meaningless. Mm-hmm. And if you go ahead and let Ohio State in, even though they didn't even win the Big Ten, that's just wrong to me.
Now, I think the easy solution for the college football playoff would be Alabama, winning out, of course. Clemson winning out, because Clemson, despite losing, they're still in position to go to the ACC title game because they did beat Louisville earlier in the year. So they're number 4. It's a bad loss, but it doesn't necessarily hurt their prospects in terms of a playoff spot. And then the other thing that would make this pretty easy is have Michigan win out. And then, Michigan goes to the Big Ten title game and they win the Big Ten title and they're a top 4 team. Easy. Ohio State gets kicked out. And I think if that were the case, if those 3 teams win out, Alabama, Michigan, Clemson, then I think you allow Louisville into the number 4 spot as an at-large, right? Because
but that's the thing, though. Okay,
because Washington right now, they're not even in line to play in the Pac-12 title game.
You're kidding.
They still have to play Washington State. If they beat Washington State, then they'll go to the Pac-12 title game. But again, if the season were to end right now, Washington has that one conference loss where Washington State does not.
Wow.
But Washington State also plays Colorado this weekend, and Colorado is leading the South. And that's a tight race in the South with Colorado, who's at number 10 right now, Utah, who's at number 12, and USC, a game behind both of them, who's number 13 in the country after beating Washington. So very kind of it's just a mess if things were to stay as they are right now. But knowing college football, it's not how it's going to play out. Things will sort themselves out through the next couple of weeks, you hope.
Well, with the Big Ten in particular, the best thing that can happen to the committee, to the playoff committee, is for Michigan to beat Ohio State and then beat Wisconsin in the championship game.
Right.
That solves that
Ohio
problem.
State, Michigan, and then you have the question of, well, okay, do we put the Big Ten champion in and then Ohio State in as like the number 4 team? Do we leave the Big Ten champion out completely and just leave Ohio State up there?
You can't do that. You cannot do that. I mean, you could, but oh my God.
And the other nightmare scenario here, you see who's creeping around at number 9 in the rankings right now? Oklahoma.
Yep.
So here's the other kind of wrinkle on this is if they're really paying attention to conference champions, if that is what they care about the most, the top conference champions right now would be Alabama, Clemson, the Big Ten champ, and Oklahoma.
Yep.
Which is, you want to see Oklahoma play Alabama? You want to see this Oklahoma team play Alabama? No thanks.
No.
You want to see Alabama play Penn State? Or
No.
Wisconsin? No.
No, but that's the thing. This is going to be the year because we've really been kind of lucky if with the playoff. The committee has, at least the past couple of years, where it's kind of taken care of itself.
Yeah, there's been a little bit of chaos, but nothing on this scale in terms of
this year they're going to have to. I think this might be the year finally where we have to have the real debate, because I don't think anyone's going to argue that Penn State is better than Michigan or Ohio State.
No.
But if you're going to go by what the committee has said is most important, if Penn State somehow manages to win the Big Ten, how can you put Ohio State, especially after Penn State's beaten them head-to-head, how do you put Ohio State in ahead of a Penn State team that beat Ohio State? How do you do that? You can't do it.
That would make it worse.
Yeah.
If Penn State actually won. If Wisconsin wins, I mean, Ohio State beat Wisconsin too.
Yeah.
Even though that one was later.
Then we're talking about a Michigan-Wisconsin matchup. I'll tell you something. Michigan beat Wisconsin in Michigan 14-7, so I'm not so sure that Wisconsin wouldn't take them at a neutral site.
Yeah. Exactly.
I've been saying it all along. And look, I know I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm an Ohio State alum. I get it. But I'm also, as I try to be as unbiased as I can about this stuff, Michigan is not as good as people think they are. We've seen it. I've said it all along. When they play a team that's good, they have a lot of trouble with them. You saw it again on Saturday night, except this time they lost. It wasn't a 14-7, barely squeaked one out over Michigan or Wisconsin. This time they couldn't beat it. They couldn't get it done. So I don't know. It's going to be a glorious mess, and we're just going to sit back and enjoy it, I guess.
Yeah, there's just so much that's still up in the air and moving parts.
Well, because Louisville's sitting out there. I mean, what do you do with them?
And Louisville's good. And the thing with Louisville, so let's say Louisville finishes the season undefeated.
Yeah.
And their one loss came. How close was that game that they played against Clemson? Like 3 points?
I don't remember. It was very close.
Pulling it up right now. It was 6 points.
6 points. Okay, but that was in Clemson, right?
Yeah. So Louisville dominates the rest of their schedule. They have one loss, and it's 6 points on the road to potentially, I guess, if things were to keep working out, Clemson would be at the least number 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why not give Louisville a shot? I think my perfect matchups in terms of good football too, in terms of what would be an exciting playoff. Get the Big Ten champ against Clemson for the 2-3 ranking, and then let Alabama play Louisville. I'd watch those games, man.
Sure.
Those would be fun.
Well, in Washington, I think here's the thing too. If Washington wins the Pac-12, they've got to be in. Simple as that, because they're going to do it with one loss if they do it. Yeah,
because again, if Washington, I guess it depends on where the committee puts Washington State if they lose to Colorado this weekend. But Washington potentially has two ranked teams left to play on its schedule in Washington State and either Colorado, Utah, or USC. And those would be 2 more ranked wins in conference to give them a conference championship. I think you would have to put Washington in there.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it, from what I saw with them against USC, I don't know if Washington's in that level. I think Washington's good, but they're not. I don't think they're on the same level as Louisville or Clemson or Alabama.
I would say I would put Washington in the Louisville. I think Louisville's a very good team. I don't think that they're like Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson level, though. I think they're one very, very small step below that. Not saying they couldn't beat those teams, but I think just, head to head, I'd give Ohio State, Alabama, and Clemson the edge slightly over a Louisville team. Same with Washington. But I'm just saying that I think from a fairness standpoint, if Washington wins the Pac-10, they will end up going 12-1 to do it. You've got to put them in the playoff. There's just you can't keep them out and put Ohio State in. Like, say if Ohio State wins out but doesn't make the Big Ten title game, you can't. I think Ohio State's done at that point. I'm sorry. And that there you go, Michigan fans. You think I'm biased? No, my team really doesn't deserve to be there unless Penn State trips up along the way and the Buckeyes manage to get into the Big Ten championship. Then, yeah, of course. But short of that, no, I don't think they deserve to be there. Are they better? Sure, but this isn't the way this works. In my book.
Again, the committee has to determine, or at least this will help us determine what the committee is looking for. Is it simply the best 4 teams in college football, or is it the 4 best conference champions, or is it even just the 4 most deserving teams?
Well, that's the thing.
Which one of those 3 are they going to go with? Right now, with no conference championships being decided, of course, it would seem that they're still just going with 4 best teams, because you have 3 of the top 4 lose, right? Mm-hmm. 1 doesn't move, and the one drop, and the other 2 drop 2 spots. That's not a punishment.
Not really.
No, I mean, basically this last week might as well not have counted, because the same 6 teams that were competing for playoff spots a week ago are still competing for those playoff spots. There's not a whole lot of change there. You have the top 6, like we mentioned, and then the rest is kind of below that. But the line between 6 and 7 is the line between national championship contenders and a bunch of really good teams, but not that elite level college football team that we've been looking for this year.
Well, this is what it's going to boil down to. This is what makes it very interesting, because you're right. You've got 3 ways of looking at it. Conference, and they've clearly put the premium on conference championships the first 2 years. If you remember, TCU,
that's how Oklahoma jumped out of nowhere to get there.
Right, and you remember the first season when Ohio State won the whole thing. They got in at the expense of a TCU team and said, hey, we deserve to be in there. And you know what? A lot of people agreed. But Ohio State...
But, they were co-champions.
But Ohio State had won an extra game in a conference championship, and that made the difference. Mm-hmm. So now, do you come back just 2 short years later and say, okay, in 2014, it was important that Ohio State won that Big Ten championship, but now, well, they're just really good, and even though they're not even involved in the championship picture in the Big Ten, we're going to put them in anyway. I mean, then they just look like a bunch of hypocrites.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing I thought about, is that if that were the case, if they just ignore conference championships because it's been kind of a crazy season, the Big 12 would be the conference most livid about that.
Yeah.
1, because they got shut out the first time. 2nd, because they would try to put up an argument that Oklahoma was a conference champion and they should be in the top 4 as they're number 9 in the country right now. And by the way, the Big 12 will be decided this weekend when they play at West Virginia, who, despite West Virginia being in the Big 12 title picture, is somehow 5 spots behind Oklahoma.
Yeah. With a better record, I might add, too.
Yeah. But one less game. Same. I think they both lost in conference. I was trying to pull that up.
But you know what? I think the committee right now is just sitting back and hoping that this thing works itself out.
Yeah.
But again, if it holds true to form, now it didn't last week, and it may not again, and this is college football, and one thing we've learned over the last 10 years or so is that you can't expect anything to be certain in college football. So we could still get another 2 or 3 weekends where things just go all to hell. But if it holds right now, you're going to break the seal on either putting a 2-loss team in or you're going to let a non-conference champ into it. There's no way around it at this point, if it holds the way it is right now.
The other thing that I think this opens up the discussion for is of all the college football playoff seasons we've had, this being the 3rd one, this is the best season to argue for an expanded playoff picture.
I would agree. I really think that to solve this completely, let me put it this way. If you went to an 8-team playoff, it's a whole lot easier to argue that Oklahoma shouldn't get in over Penn State or whatever than it is to try to figure out, why Louisville deserves to go home or Washington deserves to go home, but, say Clemson doesn't.
Yeah.
It becomes, people are going to be, you always get the argument that if it's an 8-team playoff, team number 9 is going to be ticked off. And yes, that's absolutely true, but it's also a much easier debate to have at 8, 9, and 10 than it is at 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. And something that Scott Van Pelt brought up over the weekend was it's kind of once you see a season like this and you kind of think about how all these things have to play out, it ends up being kind of insane that these conference commissioners agreed to a system that no matter what, even in the best scenario where the conference champions, the 5 conference champions are ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one conference is going to be left out of the playoff every single year.
Mm-hmm. Like, you could even do it. You could even make it so you say, okay, look, here's how it's going to work. It's an 8-team playoff. 5 conference champs, regardless of record, are in. Yep. And then we have 3 at large.
Yeah,
there you
I'd
go.
be okay with that.
Yeah.
I'd even be okay with 5 conference champions and 1 at large. Just pick the best team that did not win its conference.
But then you get into bye weeks, and I don't know that that's fair. I mean, it is and it isn't. But if you're going to go 6, you might as well go 8. Do it that way. You say, okay, all 5 of the major conferences, you're in. So guess what, Oklahoma or West Virginia, you get to be in the playoff. You get to go home in the first round every year. Fine, that's great. Or, and then we get 3 at large. Is that way you don't have to worry about an Ohio State or a Michigan or a Louisville being on the outside looking in. Somebody's going to get screwed bad this year. Somebody's gotten screwed both years, but not like they're going to get it this year. It's going to be a very, very interesting end of the season. Again, we're still a couple weeks away, so you never know what might happen. But if Ohio State keeps cruising and they beat Michigan, which I think they will, they're going to make a mess out of everything if Penn State wins the Big Ten East.
Over to the National Football League, where, it took 10 weeks, but I think we had a good week of NFL football.
That was a really good week of NFL football. Yeah.
Really exciting. Starting off on Thursday, the Browns had a lead at halftime.
Yeah, what else is new?
And then gave up 22 points in the second half in a 28-7 loss.
Okay, real quick. Did the Browns make it to 0-16?
I thought this was their shot to win.
I did too.
A Thursday game against a Ravens team that's not that great. They host the Steelers next week. Not going to happen. They host the Giants the week after that.
Nope.
Maybe, but probably not. They host the Bengals.
That's okay. I'm going to put that one on the possible list.
Possible. The Bengals could be just nosediving here late.
Right. The Bengals may have nothing to play for at that point.
Then they're at the Bills, home against the Chargers, and at the Steelers. Home against the Chargers. Interesting, I think.
Yeah, that's another one where you've got 2 teams. I mean, the Browns are desperate for a win at that point if they haven't gotten one already. And the Chargers really are probably playing out the string at that point.
Mm-hmm. So getting their bags packed for Los Angeles.
Right. Okay. Yeah. A couple of chances. Yeah, that election ballot went down hard in San Diego.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe they go 0. I still think they got 2 legitimate chances left at a win, but I was pretty much dead on when I said 1-15.
Yeah. See, the ceiling is 1-15. If they beat the Bengals, they're not going to also beat the Chargers late, I think. They'll be like, oh, we got it, thankfully. And then they can just, kind of coast through the end of the season. But
and then we'll quit talking about a team that really deserves no conversation at all in the Browns. But they have a ton of draft picks they've already stockpiled. They will go into next year with the number 1 pick and $120 million in cap space. So if they're smart, they could turn this around pretty quick. But as we've seen in the last 16 years, they're not smart. Okay.
But with the Ravens winning, the Ravens are 5-4.
Yeah.
The Ravens have a 1-game lead in the division all of a sudden.
Yep.
After I had written them off soundly last week. They still have a lot of games left to play. I mean, they still got the Cowboys, the Patriots, the Eagles, the Steelers again, the Bengals twice down the stretch. But they're in a nice position, and you said before the season that you were expecting more out of the Ravens, and I think they've gotten that. This is more than I expected out of Baltimore.
I think Baltimore is a team that if they can get you to play to their level, they've got a chance at beating you, and they seem to be pretty good at doing that. But if, say, a Cowboys team comes in and says, okay, we're better than these guys, and we're just going to go out and beat the daylights out of them, then the Ravens aren't. I forget who I heard it. Might have been on Bill Simmons, might have been somewhere else, I don't remember, but they said the Ravens are a very fundamentally sound team. And I think that's a pretty good description of them. They're not great, but they're just solid. And, well, you can see it in their record. They're 5-4. They're solid. They're not good. They're not bad. They're just solid.
Yeah, they're doing okay. And like I said, they're doing well enough to get a first place right now, a little over halfway through the season.
Yeah,
it's not a bad spot to be in.
Right, exactly.
On to Sunday and the early games, and you know what? Having a football team back has been great. But the Rams are probably the most unwatchable football team in the entire league.
I agree.
I think I would rather watch Browns games.
At least the Browns can score a touchdown on occasion.
Yeah, the Rams won their second 9-6 game this season. All field goal.
You got a great bullpen, man. I'm just saying.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Jansen coming out of the bullpen for the Rams. The Rams are 2-1 in games which they haven't scored a touchdown. They are 2-4 in games which they have scored a touchdown. I don't know what to make of that, but there's a light at the end of this tunnel, though, Greg. Jared Goff gets the start this weekend in Miami.
Really?
Or Miami at home, I should say.
Really?
They're finally letting the chains off and saying, this is the time to do it. And I don't know what changed between Sunday afternoon and Monday or Tuesday, because after the game on Sunday, Fisher said, "Oh no, Case did a good job out there. He's still our quarterback." Blah blah blah.
What is he watching?
I don't know.
Is he watching Case Keenum highlights that you put together over the course of his career? Because other than that, I don't know where he's seeing this.
He's popping in University of Houston tapes.
I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing with the Rams, like 2/3 of the game story I read in the paper on Monday morning were about the punter, and I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
This team's best player right now is the punter.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny, and I'm probably going to get his jersey just because it's kind of funny, but it's just a sad state of affairs.
Well, let me ask you this now. Okay, if you're the Rams, and I'm wondering, if you're Jeff Fisher and the people in the coaching staff with the Rams, the front office, are you kind of half hoping that Goff goes out there and breaks his leg in the first half so that you can finally go to Sean Mannion and be good?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I just don't know. I really don't know.
We finally get to see him, and I'm wishing him the best. I want the Rams to be good because I think it's great they're back in Los Angeles. But geez,
he says that he's been ready for a few weeks. Who's to know?
It took him 9 freaking games to beat out Case Keenum.
But see, I don't know if that's entirely him. I don't know if that's. Nobody knows what the hell the problem is. Was it Fisher protecting him, trying to get him more practice reps before he thought he was too ready, so he could be very, very, very ready to play? Was it that he just couldn't beat out Case Keenum? Is it that he's not very good? Is it is it that the owner didn't care and then finally said this week you stop being an idiot, play our starting quarterback?
That's my option. I think that if I had to make a guess, I would say that Stan Kroenke stepped in and said enough. We gave up our future for this guy. We paid him a ton of money, and I'm not a football coach. I'm just the owner of the team. But even I can tell you, Case Keenum's not any damn good. It's time to try something else. That's my guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's also kind of telling about this game that there wasn't a 100-yard rusher, and Case Keenum was the leading passer with 165 yards. So,
I'll just say that it's going to be interesting. Goff's going to be going up against a halfway decent Miami team, so we'll get a pretty good idea this week.
The Jets also started Bryce Petty of Baylor fame for the first time in this game. He didn't play all that well either. There's a reason he hasn't played up until now,
right.
too. It's just with Geno Smith going down and then Ryan Fitzpatrick basically saying, "Yeah, fuck this, I'm done. You can bench me if you want. I don't really care. You guys are assholes." So the Jets are kind of a mess. They were supposed to be good.
I just feel bad for the people that had to sit through that game. There had to be people in the stands that actually watched this football game, and wow. Yeah. Okay.
It was an early game, so I got to miss most of it. To another one of our teams that is just sorely disappointing. Can we safely say that the Packers aren't good?
I've been saying it for 4 weeks now. Nobody wanted to believe me. They're not good. They're a bad football team. Simple as that.
21-0. The Titans led after the first quarter.
Yeah.
What the hell? The Titans aren't good. The Titans are 5-5. The Packers are 4-5 now, but there is something majorly wrong with the Packers. And
well, let me
whether it's going to happen before the season or if they're going to wait it out till the end, something needs to change there.
When your offense is getting the shotgun formation, snap it to Aaron Rodgers, and hope he can find somebody, and that's your offense, you're going to have some problems. I'm just really kind of upset that I finally give up on my irrational confidence Titans and look at them go this year. They're 5-5. But the Packers aren't good. They're just not good. They've got a lot of problems. I don't know where you even begin to fix it, but they've got no running game. The offense, like I said, it seems to be just a matter of have Aaron run around and maybe somebody will get open. And I think Mike McCarthy, it's been fun. Enjoy your Super Bowl ring. We'll see you next time. You're done after this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. The Packers are now a full game behind the Lions and Vikings in the division.
I mean, they might still, just because of how poorly the Vikings have been playing and Detroit's just so widely inconsistent, they might still stumble their way to a division title, but I wouldn't get excited if I were a Packers fan, I can tell you that.
Yeah, there's some light there that they can crawl through, but
I am a Packers fan, and I'm not going to get excited about it.
No. Speaking of those Vikings, they lose their fourth game in a row after a 5-0 start. Just kind of a crazy fall the Vikings have taken. And they actually had a decent game for a half. You know, they were down 7-0 after one. They put up 20 points in the second quarter. And then they get shut out the rest of in all the other three quarters. And the Redskins just kind of chug along and pull this one out for a 26-20 win. Redskins are looking okay, 5-3-1. They're hanging around in the playoff standings. Right now they'd be the second wild card team. But the Vikings, what the hell happened to that team?
I think that I don't know what Bradford's stats were again in this game. I don't know, but I just think that
40-7, 2 TDs.
So he wasn't terrible then, right?
Wasn't terrible, no.
I don't know what their problem is because he's still putting up pretty good numbers. The defense was good at the start of the season. I don't know what their deal is. Maybe it's just one of those stretches. You know, maybe they end up finishing the season 11-5 after this. Who knows?
Chiefs beat the Panthers on the road. The Panthers were in control of this game going into the fourth quarter. They gave up 17 points in the fourth to the Chiefs, and the Chiefs improved to 7-2. They're still moving right along, and the Panthers just another notch in their belt on what's been a terrible season.
What happened to the Panthers? I just don't get it. They were 15-1 last year.
Yeah,
I know you always get a Super Bowl hangover, but geez.
Yeah, it's a little Super Bowl hangover, a little bit better schedule than they had to play last year.
Yeah, that's true.
They lost some pieces on the defense, but you still got Cam Newton. You still got, pretty much the same offensive talent. They've got some injuries at running back. They still got Luke Kuechly on defense, though. I'm not sure myself. You know, this is just a team that didn't seem like they were capable of doing or falling this far. After last season, you thought that they would regress a little bit,
yeah.
But to 3-6, that's.
I mean, yeah. When you go 15-1, I mean, even no matter what, you're going to fall back a little bit because you just don't put together back-to-back 15-1 seasons. But these guys just, I don't know. Maybe that loss to the Broncos, maybe it's just a lot of combination of things, and they're just kind of reeling from that. I really don't know because they should be better than this.
So all three teams in the AFC West have 7 wins. The AFC West is sending those 3 playoff teams, and that's the best division of football. They
are going to end up playing each other a little bit down the stretch here, so that could change. But they're still the best division in the AFC by far. I mean, yeah. 3 teams with 7 wins. That's really good, and I'm surprised. I'm still surprised the Broncos. I guess I just didn't give them enough credit. I didn't think they would be this good even this late in the season, and that they're legit.
The Eagles pull one out at home to kind of get things righted. They're 4-0 at home, are the Eagles. With a 24-15 win over the Falcons. Falcons are still okay. A big win for the Eagles to get back into things here at 5-4.
Pulled out of that nosedive they were in. That was a good job. I think the Eagles, look at them next year. Well, it's very hard because in football, I think Bill Parcells said at best each season's an entity unto itself, and very little carries over to the next season. But you can also kind of go, okay, the Eagles are headed in the right direction, and I think they're going to get even better. They're solid this year, better than I thought they would be.
Yeah, they're a half game out of a playoff spot right now behind the Redskins with their tie. And they're still a game behind the Giants. Things could change. They could make a run, but at the same time, I think they've got a nice little balance here. Things are looking nice for the Eagles, all things considered. Down to New Orleans for the Broncos.
What an ending.
This one out. Holy crap. the Saints score a touchdown to tie it at 23-23. And they're going to kick the extra point. They're going to go ahead with, 30 seconds left?
Yep.
Things were going to be easy. Broncos block the extra point, return it for the 2-point conversion, and the 25-23 win. That's as slim as you could make it.
Yep.
In terms of pulling things out. That was incredible. One of the more insane finishes we've seen to a football game this year and in recent times.
I love the fact, this is what I love about the change in the extra point rule. First off, it's not a gimme anymore. And they're still making it most of the time. But it's something that you got to watch now because you just never know. And look at this one. I mean, if this is last year or whenever they made the rule change, before they made the rule change, this game ends right there. That's it. It's over. Because even if the Broncos block it, then we're just looking at a tie game and we go to overtime. Now They can win on this play, and they did. It was incredible. But I think he stepped out of bounds, too.
Yeah. There was a little back and forth there. Couldn't really tell with the angle, go with the call on the field, but he probably stepped out.
I think he did. And I'll tell you why. And I heard him talking about it on Bill Simmons, and I agree because I was watching it as it happened. It wasn't like the Saints went, hey, he stepped out. They all were like, wait, no. I mean, everybody's pointing, look, right there. And I just don't think that everybody can react the same way like that all at once on the idea that, like, hey, we want to make it look like he stepped out. I think he actually did. They saw it and they reacted accordingly. And I think he stepped out. But like you said, the way replay works, you've got to have evidence that is beyond anything else, and they didn't have it. So you got to let the play stand. Still a hell of a way to end a football game. That was really something.
Yeah, no, that was impressive. The Texans and the Jaguars. Texans win this one 24-21. The only thing I really want to talk about in this game is Blake Bortles had a pretty good day, all things considered. Did you see his one interception he threw?
I did not.
Poor guy. He drops back. There's no options downfield, so he's just going to throw the ball at the feet of the lineman to spike it. This play's over or whatever. Throw it at the ground. So he throws it at the ground, but it catches the top of the cleat of one of his linemen.
Oh no!
Pops up in the air. The Texans the lineman grabs it, and it's an interception.
That's typical Jaguars football, right?
Yeah.
So Gus Bradley's gone after this year. I mean, as much as we like the guy and everything, he's done, right?
Yeah.
I think I gotta be.
The other thing with the Texans, I forgot to mention it when I said they're playing the Raiders this week on a Monday night. They're playing on Monday night, but they're also playing in Mexico.
Yeah.
Raiders-Texans in Estadio Azteca in Mexico City.
There will be, about 190,000 people at that game? It's a lot. I don't think it's quite that much, but it's quite a bit if I remember right.
Especially with the Raiders. I think the last time they did this was Niners-Cardinals?
Might have been, yeah.
Like 10 years ago?
I think the Cowboys played down there once, too, which, I mean, you got to think, geez, there's a team to put for a game in Mexico City, it's the Dallas Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but, that'll be fun. I think that gives the Raiders a big advantage in this game. But look at the Texans, 6-3, and they're terrible. I mean, they're just not good.
No.
Brock Osweiler, what do you have, like 80 yards passing in this game?
Something like that. The whole thing is a mess. I don't think Brock Osweiler is either not good or not the right quarterback for them.
I was just going to ask, Denver fans, are you still upset that Brock Osweiler left?
Yeah, well, I don't think so. The defense is still okay.
I dropped the defense for my fantasy team. I dropped their defense for my fantasy team. I have no faith in them at all anymore.
Well, yeah, I've got nothing for the Texans. They're going to lose their first round playoff game at home to whoever the hell they play.
Yep.
Because if the season ended right now, they'd be playing Denver in the first round. Good luck.
Let me ask you this, real quick, because clearly the Texans are probably going to go 9-7 and get a home playoff game. Do we think that it should be based on records regardless of where you finish? Let's say that the Raiders win the AFC West at, just for fun, we'll say 13-3, and the Chiefs go 12-4, and the Broncos go 11-5, and you got the Texans sitting there at 9-7. Should they still get a home game? Because the only thing they did was they won enough games to beat three pretty bad teams out in the division. That's it.
I don't know if I would necessarily argue for it. but I wouldn't argue against it because we've seen it plenty of times where you have these wild card teams with a better record than one of the division champions. And right now, both wild cards have better records than both division champions.
Yeah.
It'd be okay if we had a system where you winning the division is still an automatic playoff spot, but it does not mean automatic home field advantage.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about removing the playoff spot. No, I never want to go because there's so many people that go, we should just make it based on records. Well, then get rid of the divisions entirely. No, I'm saying that should a division title automatically mean a home game win? Like, say if you're the who was it that won 8-8 a couple years ago and won the division? I think the Chargers might have, as a matter of fact. Should they get a home game over, say, a 12-4 Kansas City team? You know, I think that, okay, you still put them in the playoffs, sure. They're still division champions. I'm not just sure that 8-8 warrants a home game is what I'm saying.
No, I get that. I mean, I kind of like things the way they are. It gives you an extra thing for winning the division.
That's true, too, yeah.
And just because that's also the way it's always been. And
well, yeah, not only that, I'm not gonna die on a hill for it or anything. I mean, it doesn't bother me that much. I just wonder sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't even know if home field advantage matters that much in the NFL sometimes.
Not like it used to.
We've seen plenty of these wild card teams go ahead and win the Super Bowl from like the 6th spot. So it's not. Yeah. Yeah, it's not. I'm not going to live or die on it. I'm not going to like have a fight with anybody over it.
Well, you talk about the playoff or the wild card teams. I mean, for a while that was kind of like what you had to do. We had the Giants do it, the Packers did it, the Steelers did it. You know, from the number 6 spot. That was the way it was for a few years there. Not anymore, but for a few years it was like that was the way you wanted to go in. Get hot at the end of the season and keep rolling. Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of the Chargers,
look at the Dolphins quietly.
Dolphins quietly hanging around with a 31-24 win, but the story here is not the Dolphins winning this game. Phillip Rivers threw 2 interceptions in the final minute 16, and the Dolphins scored points on both of them.
Oh boy!
For the 31-24 win.
Can the Chargers think of any more heartbreaking, totally terrible ways to lose football games this year? Or have they run out finally?
It's insane. Let's say half of those losses break the other way. And the Chargers, if that happens, if the Chargers hold on in at least 3 of those losses, they're 7-3 all of a sudden. They're right there with the Broncos. Maybe they're ahead of the Raiders because one of those Raiders games was tight. They may even be ahead of the Chiefs if they win that Chiefs game. The Chargers should be right in the thick of this thing, but they're not.
Bounce of the ball here, bounce of the ball there, and Mike McCoy goes from being the guy that you want fired to maybe a Coach of the Year candidate. That's how crazy the NFL is.
Moving on down, the Cardinals outlast the 49ers 23-20. Kind of a boring football game, but the Cardinals do what they do, and the Niners do what they continue to do.
I think the Cardinals are my biggest disappointment this year. I just thought they'd do better than this. Yeah,
I mean they're 4-4-1. They are what would that put them? A game and a half out of the playoffs. There's still opportunity there for them, for sure, if they can win down the stretch and knock off one of these NFC East teams. But there's something not right there. The more and more I've watched of this team, Carson Palmer is done. Yes, he put up 376 yards in this game, but he's done. He's not a quarterback that is going to lead this team back to what it was, a year ago or 2 years ago. It's not a quarterback of a Super Bowl contender. The defense is still really good. David Johnson's a great running back. Larry Fitzgerald is a timeless wonder. 12 receptions, 133 yards.
He is truly amazing.
But they've also not gone out of their way to draft a new quarterback over these last few years, and that's their own undoing.
You got to do something because you've got Palmer, and I couldn't even name their backup. I have no idea. It's Drew Stanton. That's right.
Drew Stanton.
But that's not your future, and you've eventually got to put somebody in that spot. I like the idea. I mean, I thought that getting Carson Palmer was a smart move because he's a guy that if he works out, you've made a nice investment, and if not, oh well. He worked out for a little bit, and now it's time to start looking at the future.
The best-looking game of the entire weekend, and I agree with your list wholeheartedly here, the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers. What a football game this was, back and forth.
Oh, my goodness.
What did they say, ultimately, like 7 or 8 lead changes?
I believe 8 was the final count in lead changes.
And the final lead change, there's like 30 seconds left. The Steelers are trying to keep the Cowboys out of the end zone, hold them to a field goal. The Cowboys look like they're just trying to run the ball into the middle of the field to set up said game-winning field goal, or go-ahead field goal at the time. And Ezekiel Elliott just busted another one through the line. It goes basically untouched in the end zone for a 35-30 win. Elliott, 21 carries, 114 yards. Roethlisberger looked great in this game. Dak Prescott looked great in this game. Antonio Brown, another huge day. Just probably one of the best football games we've had all year in terms of what it aesthetically looked like from a jersey standpoint as we're wont to look at things. And just pure football, this was great.
I think there's a lot of things to say about this game. Like I put in my list on the boards about my best and worst uniform matchups list. I don't know if there's such a thing as the quintessential NFL matchup, but if there is, I'm pretty sure it's these two.
Yeah, the second they switched it on, there's something to seeing the Cowboys play the Steelers.
Well, there's a lot of history there. They've met in the Super Bowl, three times, I think.
Yeah, it just calls back to a certain era of football.
Right, and they were, in the 70s, they were it. It was the Cowboys in the NFC, Steelers in the AFC. It's just I've never been a fan of either team, but I got to tell you something. There's just something special about when these two play each other. You just can't get around it. And boy, did the game ever deliver. I mean, geez. But I read it on Peter King, and then I heard it again on Bill Simmons, and I'm going to agree wholeheartedly with this. Only the president of the Tony Romo fan club would want to bring him back at this point.
Well, do you see his press conference yesterday?
Romo's?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
He made a written statement and read it from the podium, basically saying that Dak Prescott has earned the right to be the quarterback of this team. It's not something that I like. It's not something that I'm particularly happy with. But it's what happens. And he said he's like, it happens to a lot of quarterbacks where sometimes you get your opportunity and you try to do the best with it and you don't want it to be taken away from you. And that's what Dak Prescott's done. And I'm going to do nothing but support him and be there for him. And I'm doing this now so that I'm not a distraction to this team down the way, because in his words, he said that there's something magical going on with this team right now. And I don't want to be the one to break it.
Wow. Look, I don't know if it was totally like just a move to make him look good, or if he was legit, but whatever the case, that's a class move by Tony Romo.
100%.
Yeah, and he's right. We've been saying it all along. He's absolutely right. And whatever his reasoning was, that's just a real team player thing to do. Like, look, I'm not going to mess this up. But then you think about it too. Are the Cowboys in great shape now? Because now you're going to give it to Prescott, let him take it the rest of the way, okay? But let's say that they get in the playoffs and Prescott does what rookie quarterbacks are prone to do and he starts having some trouble. What a great option to have Tony Romo to go to as your backup. I think that, wow. He just put the Cowboys in really, really good shape with that, because that settles it. That's it. It's done. It's over. And Prescott's there the rest of the way. He knows it. And you've got Romo there as a very nice security blanket. Wow. Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah, great move by him. I was really surprised to see it when it did pop up, but it's incredible. And again, Dak Prescott continues to do what he do. Ezekiel Elliott, MVP, right?
Who else? I mean, okay, sure, but I mean, who else would you pick besides him?
I know a lot of people keep putting out Matt Ryan for reasons that, I mean, yes, the Falcons have been okay.
No,
I don't know about that one. Tom Brady.
He's missed 4 games.
He missed 4 games, but he's still the Patriots are still where they are. He's still.
I'll tell you, if they hadn't lost this week, maybe, but I don't know. I think Zeke's it, and I'm really, after seeing what guys like Trent Richardson did going high in the draft and a couple others along the way, it's kind of surprising that Zeke's been as good as he is. Because I mean, he was fantastic at Ohio State. I mean, you guys got to see it on the national stage in 2014 when they won the title, and a little bit last year. But geez, I didn't expect him to translate to be basically the same running back in the NFL that he was at Ohio State, where he just breaks plays like that. It's amazing.
Yeah, Matt Ryan is leading in most of the major passing categories. That's why he's MVP candidate. But when you just look at the records, are you going to pick a guy from the Falcons or are you going to pick a guy from the Cowboys?
Well, not only that too, but are the Cowboys at what are they, 8-1 now? Are they at 8-1 without Zeke Elliott?
No, I don't think so.
That's the difference to me. I'm not saying that the Falcons wouldn't be 6-4. Or would I think that they could be 6-4 without Matt Ryan. I'm not saying that that's not a knock on Matt Ryan, but I mean a 6-4 team. I'm sorry, I just don't see an MVP candidate coming out of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you look at some of the other top teams, like I guess from the Patriots, it'd have to be Brady, but he again, missed the 4 games and still not blowing the world away. The Chiefs, there's nobody that really stands out from them.
No.
There's Broncos, nobody particularly jumping out. Seahawks have worked their way back up into it. We'll talk about them in a second. But I would think it would have to be Ezekiel Elliott and then Dak Prescott up there too.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of MVP candidates, and they're both rookies. It's insane that those two, to have two rookies come in and be such a huge impact to make the Cowboys are the best team in the league. Yeah.
I don't know about the league, but definitely in the NFC. No, and you know what? No, I think okay. All right, we're going to talk about them in a minute, but I think the Seahawks are the best team in the league.
Really?
I think so.
Huh.
I don't know. I want the Cowboys to be, but God, the Seahawks, they're infuriating because they just drive me nuts. It's like, could you please just go away? But I think that they're probably the best again.
Yeah,
Overall,
I still like the Cowboys overall, but we can go ahead and move on to that game. Seahawks Patriots. Yeah, we kind of were down on the Seahawks early. Their offensive line still has a little bit of issue, but they've slowly worked their way back up. They're 6-2-1, the second best record in the NFC, and they reverse their Super Bowl against the Patriots years ago. It was just so weird to have this where the roles were completely flipped. The Patriots were the team that was driving on the one.
Yep.
It was 4th and 1, and they decide to throw instead of run. From a yard out, and the Seahawks stop them. It's kind of a funny little thing.
You would think that when it works out like that in sports, that's like Hollywood stuff that you would see in some stupid sports movie.
Yeah,
but it happens a lot. I mean, it was like the situation was completely reversed, and the Seahawks got the better of it this time. But I tell you, I don't know. Maybe the Seahawks aren't the best, but they're not going to go quietly in this thing. It's between them and the Cowboys, I think, in the NFC for sure, right?
Yeah, and this was a huge win to go on the road to New England. The Patriots, who had been cruising along, nothing was going to knock them out of their stride.
Yep.
I got to say that that's probably one of the more surprising wins that I've seen all season from anybody.
I think that's what I mean. The Seahawks just were kind of staying in it and doing things that you don't normally get away with in New England. And I mean, it gave me a little hope. It's like, okay, at least we know the Patriots are beatable now.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. I don't like it, but I got to think that if I had to bet between the Steelers, I guess it would depend on where it was played too. But I can't say I like the Seahawks team because that's not true. But I think they're pretty darn good.
Yeah. It pains me to say it too, of course, but yeah, they've worked their way back up, and to think that they came. The other reason that I think we all threw them under the bus is that they had to be part of that 6-6 tie against the Cardinals, and you said, no, any team that does that is not a good football team. I don't care who you are. I'm done with you, Seattle.
Yeah.
And then they won the last 2 games. Now they're 6-2-1. So I don't know. I really don't know what to make of the Seahawks, but I'd still put the Cowboys over them. I just think that running game with Ezekiel Elliott is something that you know what? You don't find that with any of these other teams in the league right now. No other team run the ball the way the Cowboys are running the ball right now.
Well, that's true. It's a tough call. I don't know. I just what I'd like to see is the Seahawks get upset in the first round and be done with them, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, let's see. If they were to play the playoffs right this second, the Seahawks would have a bye in the first. And then they play the winner of I don't know, Lions.
They just won't go away.
Falcons, Lions, or Giants, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then Monday nights, the Giants beat the Bengals 21-20. Giants edge out the Bengals late in the fourth quarter. Giants are 6-3. They're in a playoff spot. They're looking okay. I think the Giants are pretty solid in terms of where they're at in the playoff picture. Anything to say before we head out of here, Greg?
I just want to say it again. The Rockets finally beat Northern Illinois, so go Rockets.
Go Rams. Go Jared Goff. We'll see what he can do. For Greg, I'm Zach. This is basically a football show. Enjoy the football.
Good evening and welcome, everybody. I'm Kirk Herbstreit along with Brent Musburger.